I would like to welcome everyone back to Cryptopolitan's talk show, Web3 Masterminds. And this time we have with us the 4Protocol co-founders, and the Umbrella Network team is joining us to talk about everything Web 3.0. So welcome Mitch, Key, John, and Joel.
Hello guys, super excited to be here.
Hey guys.
Yeah, really great to have you guys here this afternoon.
Hey everyone, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So let's jump right in. Could you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
So to start with, guys, from Forward's side, Forward Protocol is the Web3 solution where people can drag, drop, and deploy their applications and go live from ideation to implementation in a shortest time span. And our focus is blockchain adoption. So the end goal, I mean, the whole blockchain world, it's amazing the way it's growing, but we need more people coming in, and we want to be that gateway. We want to be the one driving that. So we are bringing a lot of real world entities and getting them onto the blockchain and bringing more new eyeballs, new users to the entire ecosystem of DeFi, metaverses, gaming, whatnot. And Web3 is a gateway, and Forward is the momentum that's driving it. So our end goal is to make things super simple that any normal user can use it without the challenges, the difficulties of the blockchain. So, you know, we don't really have to teach them blockchain. It shouldn't be something that we have to train them on. It's something that intuitively they understand and use it. And that's what Forward is all about.
Thank you, Kiki. Can we hear the same from Joel or John?
Sure. My name is John, president of Umbrella Network, and what we do is that we're a layer 2 decentralized data oracle. So what oracles do is we bring data on chain. It's a critical part of blockchain infrastructure because smart contracts inherently can't access, off-chain real-world data. So oracles act as a kind of a bridge to bring that data to smart contracts. So what differentiates us from other oracles is that we aggregate our data if we're bringing it on chain. So as an example, if an application needs, let's say, the top 100 cryptocurrency prices, most oracles will have to bring one piece of data at a time. And each piece of data would have to be written on chain. That means potentially on Ethereum, for example, if it's $20, $30 to write a transaction, multiply that by 100. Or if you need even more data, it can get prohibitively expensive. So what we do is we aggregate all our data, and then we write it on chain, in a single transaction. So obviously that gives you a massive advantage when it comes to cost, when it comes to ability to scale. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We bring lots of data on chain for applications to use.
Okay, thank you, John. How about you, Joe? What is your role in the Umbrella Network?
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for having me. Yeah, so I'm Joel. I'm head of strategic partnerships and business development. My role specifically is to go into the world and help, make those connections to bring that data available onto the blockchain, and then go find, amazing companies and developers that are building the next generation of, Web3 blockchain-based products who need this data. And so in terms of Oracle Networks, solution, John covered it quite well in terms of, being able to aggregate data. And I think what's really exciting about that, or what makes this different, is we're able to touch data that other oracles can't. So we're talking like large, complex data sets like, green energy or sports or weather or these kind of things, right? That just weren't available to developers before. So you can picture when we start bringing online, all of these different data sets by vertical, that, the opportunities to create and develop are just going to be unimaginable for sure.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the Umbrella Network smart contracts. How exactly do you aggregate off-chain data?
So maybe I'll take that. What we use is a system of Merkle trees, which then takes data and then essentially rolls it up and then writes it as a single root hash on chain. And that root hash is essentially a unique identifier of all the data that's in that data tree. So that tree could contain 2 pieces of data. It could contain theoretically millions of pieces of data. At the end of the day, it can all be rolled up into a unique identifier that's written on chain. To be honest, it's a similar technology that Ethereum and Bitcoin use, in the way that they, write and connect, kind of the data on as a layer 1 blockchain or as a payment protocol. But we're utilizing it as a data structure that allows us to be incredibly efficient with, kind of storing that data on chain. But because we only need to write it once, we're potentially thousands of times more inexpensive than other, essentially linear processing oracles, which is at this point, the majority of oracles in the market today. It's the reason why we have over 4,000 data pairs that we currently offer across crypto, across equities, across, stock option data. And we're now, adding on all types of new data, like Joel touched upon previously, in green energy and in sports, in weather, essentially any data that can be accessed via API in the real world. We can take that, aggregate it, and write it on chain. Other oracles right now, maybe a few hundred data pairs, because again, they don't have the scaling mechanism that we have to be able to efficiently and write that data on chain at scale.
So John, you actually mentioned about how you're different from other oracles, but can you give an insight on how is this different from ZKP? If it is using it, or if it is similar to it, or if it competes with it, or how is it technically different? The Merkle tree version and the ZKP version.
I mean, the Merkle tree is like a bi-leaf, data structure. It's not like a ZK rollup. I mean, in some ways, it's similar in that it's still an aggregated mechanism, but there are some abilities to adjust the data structure. So for us right now, currently most of the data pairs are like sets of 2 pieces of data. So it would be BTC USD. Or in equities, it's like a specific, stock price. But we can adjust that to have multiple leaves per, node on the data tree structure, which means we could customize that to add all types of data. So, for example, with sports or personal, health data, things like that would have multiple fields. So we can customize a tree so that there would be different fields for different data points. So it's no longer data pairs, and then put that into a Merkle tree structure. And then that can get aggregated into, again, a unique root hash identifier that's written on chain. So it is different, but it's similar in the sense that it is aggregated still.
Interesting. So you mentioned about healthcare and the sports and few other sectors. So which are the sectors you have thought about so far? Because Forward Protocol is all about the real world, and that's where our interest lies. So I'm more keen to understand which sectors you have tried, or what kind of data you have tried beyond the price feeds, because that is one area which I really liked about what you guys are doing. Because anytime I speak with most of the oracles, they're obsessively focused on the price feeds. That seems to be the primary utility. Although other data can be handled, it focuses on that. So with you and other industries, just shed some light on that. Some examples.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons why we launched the project, right? We saw that there was a massive need for it. Today, there's really limited amount of data on the blockchain because of this costing challenge. And alongside that, there's a lack of fresh data, right? Even if it's updated, maybe it doesn't get updated only once an hour, or sometimes it doesn't get updated unless there's a certain percentage threshold of variance that's hit. So it's very limited. The way we're structured, we can bring literally any type of data as long as there's an API in the real world that we can pull from. So currently we're looking at things, and maybe Joel can talk a little bit more on that front, on the weather, on green energy, sports. In the past we've looked at e-commerce. We've also spoken to a partner in the travel industry that's got travel data that they're looking at potentially bringing on chain. We're working with different blockchain gaming projects right now, which we feel like is going to be a major area of growth in the coming months and years, where we're talking about potentially bringing gaming session data and how to write that appropriately on chain, and to manage and to balance it essentially between how much of it can you do off chain in terms of the computation, how much of it do you put on chain. So to be honest, the applications are virtually endless, as long as, again, there's an API in the real world and we can fetch it. We can process that data somehow and build some type of a custom data structure to hold it, that we can then aggregate and then write it on chain.
That makes sense. So these entities, what are their main purpose when they are working with you to move the data on chain? Or how are they using it? Because it's important to understand that data is not just moving on chain, but how they're using it, and how you're helping them use it in the future with their application is where your real value lies. So what is their purpose?
So, that's a good question. For us as a data provider, we are somewhat agnostic, right? In the sense that we are a data provider and a data deliverer. So what we want to focus on is, one is, bringing that data on chain, right? And making it accessible to various applications and application partners. The other is, in order to do that, we may need to build custom data solutions or custom logic. In its most simplest form, it could be a project saying, hey, look, we just launched, we're a relatively new or mid-cap project, but it seems like it's going to be pretty costly for us to work with these other oracles on the market to get our token price feed created. What can you guys do? And for us, that's super easy, because because of the way we're structured, we can add a price feed, to build a price feed within a matter of a few days. And then there are more complex needs where it's like, hey, look, we want to access these large data sets, but it's currently not on chain. How can we do this? Or even it's even more complicated, where it's, hey, we want to have access to these large data sets. We also need it to be processed with various computations and functions. And then after that data is processed, the results we would like to see on chain. So we can do all of that. And then once we deliver it on chain, how an application chooses to use it is at their discretion. We just want to be able to provide that data. Hopefully by doing that, we can help applications innovate and give them the opportunity to be able to build more, because now they have that data readily available on chain for them to do as they see fit.
I think that's very powerful, because at Forward Protocol, we are giving them all the infrastructure and building the foundation, and their existing businesses with existing data and utility. So they have a real world foundation. We give them the blockchain foundation, but then the missing link is the transfer of data or connectivity to the data from what they have to what we have here with a new blockchain solution. So it is pretty interesting, because even when we upgrade a platform, the data connectivity is usually a missing block. And you guys do an amazing job of solving it at a cost-efficient way, because that was one of the biggest challenges that a lot of brands had in the past. It's about the cost, and it's a recurring cost that continues to go on for the rest of their existence. So that's a good way. I think when Umbrella Network is integrated with Forward in the Forward factory, it gives an instant and immediate access for deploying brands to connect and use the Umbrella Network to get their data moved and transferred, connected to the blockchain, bringing it on chain. And then, like you said, it's up to them how they use it. We both are providing them different forms of infrastructure. We are providing data infrastructure, we are providing them the tech infrastructure, and it's up to them how they want to leverage it and how they want to build a business out of it. The full freedom is provided from our side on that, and we facilitate the process, making it simple and easier, even at a larger scale. I think the most important part is the scale, which is one thing that is missing in the blockchain space in quite a lot of different solutions. It's all designed for a group, set of users in a particular scale. But when we talk about millions of users that ecosystem like Forward has access to, it's a much larger scale than what many blockchains could take, many oracles could take, or many could process. And with the technologies that both Umbrella Network and Forward has developed, it is meant for the scale, which ideally means it works for everyone on a smaller size, individuals and small businesses, when we can handle something large and as big as the kind of partners that we talk about. So that is very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the most exciting parts of the partnership is the ability, obviously, I think in the next year, I think the exciting thing is you're going to have all of this new data available that companies, developers just never had access to. If you look back at 2015, a lot of the early companies were started, they were excited with their great ideas and everything, but the price was just too expensive or the data couldn't be brought on chain. And I think today, our partnership is really interesting for the wider, adoption of the entire space in the sense of if you can make that data available, that's actually, cheap and on chain. And then you can also, have something like the Forward Factory where I can create drag and drop, smart contracts that are intelligent from that vast amount of data. I think like the sky's the limit for enterprise, for, solo developers, for, companies that are looking to expand in the space for sure.
Yeah, I guess, we are saving the blockchain. At least I like to believe that.
So
Okay,
let me ask here. The partnership between Forward Protocol and the Umbrella Network is going to provide a new venture. Is going to be a new venture for both projects. So how does the Umbrella Network scale value exchange between individuals, between businesses?
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. I think if you look at, making the data available and making the data affordable, it opens up a lot of opportunities for companies, and I could even say like non-Web3 or more traditional companies. A lot of companies like enterprise right now want to enter the blockchain Web3 space. They want to bring, they want to make their data available. They want to revolutionize their supply chains or the logistic chains and things like that, but it's just not possible yet. And so I think when you can make the data available, the creation and the creativity that can come from that in the entire industry across all verticals is going to just be transformative for sure.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. What about you, John? Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Joel's saying, is correct. There's just a lot of opportunity at this point. Once data becomes more readily available, once data is much more accessible, there's a massive opportunity for layer 2 applications to innovate further. You look at, if you take an example, the mobile industry, when it was still 1G, 2G, low bandwidth, not a lot of data. It costs you, hundreds of dollars a month just to, download anything. There wasn't really much of any utility on a phone except making phone calls and sending text messages. But once the bandwidth increased, data plans got cheap, and it wasn't really driven by the end user per se. It was driven by the development side. Applications could all of a sudden start to proliferate. The smartphone became an actual item, because there's now applications. Today, fast forward to today, with 4G and emerging 5G, think about all the things that you do on your smartphone. I mean, think about when you misplace your smartphone for like 2 hours. Like, we're so dependent on it because it's the utility of all the applications that have proliferated on that system in the ecosystem that we're dependent on now. Whether it's checking, watching something on Netflix, or checking your stock portfolio, or whatever communications, messaging platforms you're utilizing. All that stuff is possible because the data is now available, and is available at a very low price point. So, we think the same thing is going to happen in Web3, and hopefully between us and Forward Protocol, as we start to kind of collaborate and bring forward, cheaper data and more availability of that data, we can help, contribute to that process for, more projects, layer 2 projects and applications to develop, innovate, and grow.
Now, John, it makes sense, with, I think if you look at a lot of Web2 companies now, and what they're looking for is cost-effective solutions. And if you're thinking, if you're starting with that sort of endpoint in mind, you've got a great chance, because ultimately that's when they encourage adoption. As soon as there's that barrier to entry, you just look for other solutions. People are trying to cut costs. Organizations are looking to streamline. And if you start off with a point that's scalable and cost effective, you're certainly onto a winning wicket. So yeah, it's a great way to start. I think you guys have got something really good going.
Oops, yeah. I think on that point too, that you just brought up, another thing that a lot of people don't consider as well about the data is also the security side. So being a decentralized Oracle obviously gives us an advantage there, in the sense of there's a lot of data out there that, a lot of companies, enterprise, even governments want to bring on chain. But to release that centralized server, or to bring that on chain, obviously comes with a lot of security concerns. And so I think that is also important as we go more into Web3, when you're talking like healthcare data or supply chain, or these kind of, data bits. They're very, very important, but also when security is, at paramount concern.
So how do you secure that, Joel?
Yeah, good question. A few ways. I would say one of the more straightforward ways would be just taking our data source, or our data from multiple sources, right? And that mitigates the attack on a single source. So I think that's more important if you look at things like DeFi and finance in general, right? Whether in the past have been attacks on a price or manipulations of price. You can imagine that in a DeFi protocol, or any kind of even simple smart contract that deals with finance. It's so important. And so, for example, our pricing feeds are taken from multiple sources to mitigate the attack. We also do, what I would call like internal smoothing or internal work on the data as well, to make sure that we, take any outliers out, or we are able to smooth out those curves. So the data is also accurate before it goes to our community validators. And this is another important thing, and John can probably expand a little bit on this, but we as a decentralized organizations have a community network of validators who clean and validate the data in order to achieve consensus. And so that also, that consensus mechanism is also really important versus, let's say, more centralized oracles, in the sense of, multiple sources. The data is, aggregated and then cleaned and validated by the community nodes to ensure that, the security across the board is good to go.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to Joel's point around that, we're one of the, few kind of truly decentralized oracles, in the sense that, we're still relatively new in the sense that it's been a year or so since we launched. So, we're still right now, taking applications from the community to become validators. Pretty soon, we will no longer take applications, but anyone can just, if they have a certain, past certain criteria, can become a node operator. It's very different from some of the other oracles out there, including the leading ones, where part of it is related to the fact that it's very expensive to be a node operator, where, it could cost tens of thousands of dollars a month to operate a node. Whereas for us, a node operator, maybe spends $2,000 a month. to operate the node. And because of that lower threshold, almost anyone can be an operator. Whereas, for other oracles, because of that high upfront investment and other things, it's mostly professional validators. So as a result of that, obviously it's much more centralized because it's corporates that are validating. There's, you don't have a network of hundreds to thousands of validators potentially. There may be only, 20, 30. So when you're in that situation, obviously there's, you're open to security risks. If there's only 20 or 30, one centralized authority is picking and choosing who can and cannot be a validator. So I think that's, one of the key differentiators, another key differentiator for us as a decentralized community network that, provides, data.
So how many different validation nodes or points would you need to achieve consensus? Or does it vary across sectors?
So right now we have a network of about 24 validators or so. Usually, and we're in the process of actually transitioning to DPoS, delegated proof of stake, sometime in the middle part of this year. So there's going to be, 7 to 10 validators that will be actually signing on that data, and obviously one selected leader that would be actually minting the block. So, so that's kind of the in terms of the numbers. But our network will continue to grow in terms of actual validators, doing consensus and being part of, the overall data network. We are currently at a pace adding 6 validators per month. So that means and we launched the community validator program in the middle of last year. Obviously, we also have our internal node operators, 2 or 3, but that's growing, relatively rapidly. At our current pace, that means we'll have over 100, close to 100 by year end, but we're going to continue to grow from there. Once we open the doors and no longer have to do it by application, we can scale quickly and potentially have thousands of validators in our network.
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights on what you're offering, what For Protocol is offering. But I think it's time to just take a step back and look at the broader technology and community, because we're talking a lot about decentralization and a lot of revolutionary technologies that have come to this sector. So I would like to hear your opinion on this. What is your, what is your take on DAOs and the metaverse? What do you think about that? Where do you see this going in the future? And do you see any connections between those two?
Yeah, I think I can jump in
Joe,
on
would
that.
you like to start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I can start on that. Wow, there's a big topic there, metaverse and DAOs. I think one of the more interesting things for me are DAOs actually. And so decentralized organizations, I think, if you think of it like a shared bank account, right? The opportunity for humans to collaborate in trustless ways in an organization. So not just a finance, organization, or not just a simple, or let's say replacing a company organization with a DAO, but the ability for humans to collaborate in a trusted way by pooling resources, having a vote, having a say, I think is just absolutely, going to be game changing. I think, it's very early stage. And as John mentioned earlier, we are in a transition to become a DAO as well. And there's lots of learning and lots of, consulting with the community and lots of collaboration there to make, that transition great and to try to contribute to the larger community that's also working on DAOs as well. In terms of metaverse, I mean, I can let John speak about this because we have quite a bit of exciting stuff lined up in the gaming world this year. And I think the whole metaverse thing is just, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what unfolds. I think it's still really early as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the metaverse, we're super early. If you go onto, Sandbox and Decentraland, and a lot of these early metaverses that are getting a lot of hype. To be perfectly frank, right now it's more hype than reality. You go in there and it's there's not a ton of stuff to do yet, but that's going to change, as I think two parts of that. One is as more people get on board, and part of that's going to be the reduction of friction. Right now you need a wallet. You gotta, know how to use MetaMask and get that set up. You can't even see Decentraland until you have that connected. So, right off the bat, that's, you're alienating, 98% of the world, right? So part of that is, the on-ramping function needs to, be greatly kind of, the friction that needs to be greatly reduced. And the second is the technology. Right. Right now, it's people may be using their phone and maybe on their laptops. Over time, as we get better improvements, whether that's better versions of Oculus or other kind of equipment to be able to provide a more immersive experience. I think all those things will help to further propel the development of the metaverse. But right now it's super early. It's going to be interesting to see all those things move forward. Obviously, Facebook with their name change to Meta, and Zuckerberg's kind of plans for the future in the metaverse. I think we're going to see more development as these larger organizations deploy more resources to further the overall ecosystem. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out.
The way I see the metaverse and the DAOs, like metaverse to me is more of a display. It's like an exhibit. So you go there, you see things, you experience. It's like going to a mall. But then the production of stuff in the mall, the things that are exhibited there, doesn't happen necessarily in the metaverse. It happens outside in a factory. So the infrastructure that we are providing, like Forward and Umbrella, they're all the things that connect to the factory for people to create things which they display out in the metaverse. Right now they display art. Sure, you can look at an art, you can go there, interact with some person there, you can buy things, or even you can play a game and gain some points. But then the processing of complex businesses displaying their products or displaying experiences out there, a good portion of them, 80%, would be happening off the metaverse in a separate application, processing it. So even when we talk about going to a metaverse, looking at a stock exchange there, the price feeds should come from somewhere. It's not built into the metaverse. It is displayed there. So any information that is showing, any product that's showing there comes from some other place, and it's an experiential place. So brands would use metaverse to host events, to host experiences. Right now, they have an opportunity to connect the real product that they have with their users and give them an experience through that with whatever way they want. They can bring a celebrity, have a music going on there. They can do anything, but that experience is what metaverse is selling. And a place where they can connect and socially do something, even if they're not physically present there. But it does not alienate or does not remove the dependencies of anything else. In fact, it builds on top of it and increases the need for the foundation to be stronger and better than ever before. I was recently in a conference and I saw a beautiful game of rock, papers, and scissors. And it took 15 minutes for us to play one version of the game because, you do a move and then you need to refresh. The person is sitting right there opposite you. Just ask them, what did you do? And you can be done with it. But now you need to wait for it to reflect there, refresh it, and finally see it. And then the other person plays. I could have done like 15 games of rock, paper, scissors in the period. So this processing is where the experience lies, even though the experience is visualized in the metaverse. So the efficiency of process, the speed, the cost, how easy we make that happen, all of that is happening behind the scenes. Anyone can build amazing metaverse opportunities out there, but unless the backbone exists, enterprises and real businesses, real users will not be able to use it. And that is where the Web3 is still the foundation for what metaverses are up to. And that does not exclude DAOs as well, because the way I see it, DAO is just a way we make decisions. It's just how we process. If I'm like 2 or 3 of us are going on a shopping in a metaverse, we could be a DAO to what we buy. It's a decision-making process between the people involved. And if it happens in a larger scale, sure, it's a bigger DAO. And if it happens on complex decisions, it's a business level, like something like a shareholders and board making the choices happening in a decentralized way through DAOs. But the concepts have to be broken down in a much more simpler way, where it can all be formed and used by any individual in their own need. Right now, if I have to make a decision, would I go to one of the DAO creation tools and create a DAO for me and 5 of our friends to make a decision? We might not. But when that becomes simple enough, like the Calendly tool that we use, in the past, it was easy to figure by email than a tool. Just sending back and forth, saying, okay, this is the time I'm available. What are the times you're available? Go back and forth and fix it. Right now, we love Calendly, but the same tool, there are multiple versions of these tools in the past. We didn't use them. It was not easy, but it has to be so simple to use it like what it is right now with the calendared appointment setting and things like that. When DAOs come to that point of simplicity, it is going to be the foundation. Everything, everyone, every entity. They might have DAOs within the teams, DAOs within a project management team, DAOs within a logo design team, DAOs within everything, because that's how the information is going to flow from one team, one party to another across organizations, everything recorded on chain. And that data is available for anyone to plug in and look at any point in future. It's very interesting to see how all this evolves in few months to a year or 2 years down the line. And I believe the work that we are all doing here is important for it to come to fruition sooner than later.
Yeah, that's right. John, what you're saying about friction, I think about it all the time. I mean, I come from a point of like not really a tech background. And so for me to, even with a real interest, to get involved and set up a MetaMask and get all that stuff done, there was a huge amount of friction. And I'm interested. People that sit outside, just for them to get involved, it's just the steps they've got to go through to actually get there. And as soon as we eliminate that, and that's what Key and I talk about all the time, like, how do we make it simpler for people? Like, how do you make a one-click application that somebody can use and use the functionality without going through the stress of having to learn? Because with a really short attention span and vying for, all these different products, vying for our attention all the time, we tend to find the path of least resistance, and we follow that. And if it becomes too onerous or you don't find a shortcut, I mean, if you like me, you find something else because it's just easier. And I think when we get to that point where we can actually do something in a simple way, we're going to find that explosion. And that's coming quite soon. I mean, it has to be, with DAOs and the metaverse and what have you, and all the sort of interest around it. There's going to be a breakthrough shortly where somebody comes up with something that is innovative and simple, and that'll just be the catalyst to really, get this whole thing on the ramp and accelerate it. So, and as Keith, I don't think it's going to be too long. Maybe another year or so, and somebody's going to come up with something, and that's going to be brilliant.
So here's a question I have. What do you think right now, from your perspective, the challenge that we face for Web3 and Oracles, both of us, with the adoption that's happening? What are the biggest challenges you foresee in the next 1 or 3 years for the adoption to happen through us?
So I think, to continue what, Mitch is saying, I think all of us are kind of in agreement. One of the big things is, if you want to talk about the challenge facing Web3 with regard to adoption, right? A big chunk of it is that friction, right? Because right now, if you look at it from a consumer perspective, they don't really care about the technology. It's always about the what's in it for me principle, right? Like, I just need to get from point A to point B, or I just need to do A, B, and C. The tech behind it doesn't really matter, whether it's blockchain, whether it's, Web 2, Web 3, that doesn't matter. So I think for us to get to that point, we need to remove as much of the friction as possible so that people don't have to jump through hoops, setting up, wallets and understanding kind of different, token assets, or, I need to, stake this thing to do that or whatever. There's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through. And again, going back to what Mitch said, like, I also agree that adoption may be coming soon. And personally, I think that adoption is going to be driven by blockchain-based gaming. Whereas DeFi 2 years ago, there was an explosion, and it still continues to be a lot of growth. But you look at the potential number of people that invest, or that are looking to do financial transactions, that's probably in the millions, maybe in the tens of millions. But you look at the number of people who play games, that's in the billions.
Yeah.
right? So now, I don't think people are all playing Axie Infinity today because I think the majority of people who play are primarily doing it to earn some money. You know, with the recent, drop in their token price and things like that, I mean, it's arguable if, that growth will continue at the same explosive rate and it's happened over the last, like few months. But for sure, with the influx of more capital and more interest from, especially from large gaming publishers, there's going to be more growth in that field. So I think what it's going to take is a very good game that just happens to run on the blockchain and provide play to earn capabilities that will start to turn the tide. Once people are like, hey, look, I don't have to play on my PlayStation anymore. I can play this other game, but instead of me having to spend $60, $100 to buy the game, I can play this game and maybe make some money on the side. Oh, that's a great bonus. Like, what would you rather do? Play the same game and spend, or play the same game and make some money, right? So like, from that principle, you would imagine that there would be this adoption, but I think a big part of it is you got to make sure that's easy for them to log on and play that game. They don't have to create a wallet and do all this other stuff. So if we have all those pieces together, I do believe that, some of those challenges around Web3 will get removed, and we are going to start to see a much broader level of mass adoption potentially in the coming year or two.
I think that's one part where Forward has been very immensely focused, is to reduce the need for the wallets and to reduce the need for the gas payments, delegating the gas payments to different parties as the platform decides. So giving them the best of decentralization and the experience of centralization, giving them the access and control and security at the same time, making their life easier. That bridge is tough, but it gives the end user, the platform who's deploying, and the user himself to make the choice. Because we might all understand the benefits of eating healthy, but we might still choose to not eat healthy at times. And it's the same way. I mean, you cannot force someone to eat healthy or starve to death. So when it comes to decentralization in the blockchain world, we do seem to stick to the extreme end, saying, if you are not going to be 100% secure, be in 100% control, you can just pay for inflation and die being poor. I think we need to create that middle ground and a ramp of onboarding the users, the transition for them to slowly take the baby steps to learn and realize the benefits of it. We know we are looking at the news right now. We know what's happening with the war, what's happening with the challenges, people's bank accounts, things are crazy out there. And that is giving people a realization. But the point of realization, okay, I need something more to, among all the stress in their life, now they're struggling with their real life problems. And now they need to go back to school and learn how to use the whole process over the next few days, few weeks, make some mistakes and add more stress to it. That is too much of an ask. And, the simpler we make for them, they come in, they try something. Okay, there's a wallet. It is not fully decentralized for them yet. But they see the crypto is sitting there. They can take it out to a decentralized wallet, but they don't have to do it right now. They can do it tomorrow. They can do it after a week, but they know that's a possibility and they should be doing it. That's good for them. And in the meantime, they know someone else is paying the gas fees and they're charging them for it, but they are not the ones authorizing it. Maybe they're paying more. That's fine, but they could pay less if they learn that. There's an incentive for them to learn, grow, and be in that ecosystem to fully transform to a decentralized person. I mean, I think decentralization is a philosophy. The moment you are once decentralized, you would never want to go back to any of the centralized networks. And that is a philosophical, to me, it's like an enlightenment, the real world enlightenment on controlled finances and whatnot. And that comes with that experience. And the more we make it easier for them, the better it is for every one of us. The more people in it, the merrier.
Absolutely. Yeah. When young people ask me, I want to work in blockchain or Web3, like, what should I study? I say UI UX design. Like, if you think about Coinbase, right? Why they exploded, why they were great, because they made it silly simple that anyone with a credit card could log in and buy crypto, right? And I think that Coinbaseification has to happen across the industry, where, a lot of that complexity is hidden behind excellent design, excellent user experience, innovative products, you know, all of these kind of things. And I think, yeah, like John said, gaming will definitely push that forward really quickly.
Yeah, Joel, it's funny when you sit and watch a group of kids, watch 10 or 12 kids sitting around playing. They might be on 6 or 7 different apps. They're playing games. They communicate seamlessly. They hop from app to app. They share images, photos, etc. And all the winners, the apps that they're using or the games that they're playing are the ones that are simple and they understand intuitively. And I think that's the hop. It's like, why do we need to teach people about the metaverse when we need to be giving them easy ramps in with things that they do intuitively? Because then you suddenly get explosive growth with people doing things that they want to do because they are, using tools and putting data, etc. with doing stuff that they do intuitively. And I think that's the key is creating the like taking the barriers away completely so that we don't have to relearn or retool, but just redirect and put them into different paths. And then you're going to get mass adoption and huge, sort of on tech.
I think it's similar to the CRM applications that we have seen. We look at some complex CRMs out there, we jump in, and then it gives you tips of, step 1, step 2, step 3. It gives you like 12 tips pointers. You use this for this function and all of that. It takes you 5 minutes to get used to the dashboard, 10 minutes, and most people are overwhelmed by that. Most of the people use it because their corporate forces them to use it and they need to learn it, but it's not the intuitive way to learn. But there are some applications that are so simple. You look at it, there's nobody guiding you. There's nobody helping you. In fact, they might not even have a support system, but there's nothing else to do there. You just have few things. The user experience is simple. You know exactly intuitively what it is that you need to do. And if you need something more, you know where to find. That amount of high, amazing user experience can change quite a bit of how this entire space operates. I cannot wait for Forward and other applications to keep designing more of those which which enable that. And the more that happens, oracles like Umbrella would be like super high in demand, because that's when more users would be there, more applications would come in. It'll create a snowball effect and more data need comes in. And at that point, the data need goes beyond just moving the data, but also the monetization of the data and buying some existing data that's already on chain. And many of the other things that you facilitate comes into play, and the economy flourishes in the decentralized world.
Yeah, it's a good idea. In fact, what we should do is get a whole bunch of 12-year-olds to be our UI designers.
Yeah, simplicity is always the best. I mean, it's the reason why Apple is where where they are today, right? They made design the forefront and simplicity kind of the message, and emotional resonance the target of kind of like their overall objective of building products. When the iPod was rolled out, it was never, oh, here's a device with 10 gigabytes of data. It was, hey, you can put 10,000 songs on here, right? Yeah. And that resonates with people. Like, oh, because people don't care about megabytes and technical infrastructure and storage. They care about what they care about, which is, hey, I want to listen to my songs, and oh, I can fit a lot of songs on here. Great, I'm going to get this thing.
Exactly right.
Okay, so let me ask you all this. We're talking about, we all agree that there's a very big innovation in the near future for blockchain. But if we think about how far we've come, what do you think was the most interesting development in the technology that has happened so far? What was like the game changer that has brought us to where we are, and why is that? Shall we start with you, John?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, we're still early stage. One big thing that I think helped is DeFi in general, because without that, we wouldn't have gotten that, kind of initial wave of public exposure, media coverage, and, kind of early adopters. And also we have now like actual case studies or use cases of people using the blockchain to transact, but it's still super early, so over time, I think we're going to see almost every industry get impacted. Any industry that requires trust has, different parties involved that need to transact in some way can benefit from, blockchain technology. Anything that can be improved by trustlessness, transparency, and just, overall like permissionless, ability to do things can benefit. And to be perfectly frank, that's literally everything, right? Whether that's governance or, any type of enterprise transactions, obviously finance, even, anything in terms of art or, intellectual property, in terms of, digital rights ownership. I mean, look at the current, NFT explosion, right? I mean, sure, some people can't understand why a JPEG is worth $500,000, but, how is that different than a contract or, a painting in some ways, because it's, it's still a unique representation. It's just that people are not used to the concept that it could be encapsulated in a digital form versus physical, but everything is moving towards digitalization. So it's, it's just an issue of adjusting your perspective or your lens to see kind of, where things are heading. But, everything I think is going to get impacted. It's definitely not going to happen overnight. With every technological or industrial, revolution or disruption, you look back, in history, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over decades. Even though when you're in it, it might seem like, oh, wow, it's happening. But the reality is, you look back, it takes years. With the internet, for example, I believe, DARPANET or DARPANET, which was like the, grandfather of, the internet, that was first, developed or invented in the 60s, but it took decades for it to actually reach a point where there was technological feasibilities and a slow adoption in the late, 1990s. And then finally, by the time, social media and all these other things that could, kind of take advantage of the benefits of the internet, Facebook didn't come around until 2008, 2009. So, it takes a long time. So I think we're still super early. It's going to probably take another 10, 20 years, as much as things are compressed now with the internet and with, with the internet being kind of prevalent and blockchain being so fast moving, it's still going to take decades, but it's going to be incredibly exciting. And for us in Umbrella, and I'm sure, you guys at Ford, I mean, it's a great time to be involved, to help lay the foundation and help, contribute towards the infrastructure building of, essentially, Web3.
Definitely. I agree with John about it being
Thank
super
you.
early. Yeah, it's really exciting in that sense. I think to add to that too, I think what's really interesting is the like philosophical or like societal conversations that we're just starting to have, right? Like we spoke about DAOs earlier or these kind of things, but the things that blockchain technology, enables and that is changing can also be at a society level, right? Like if you think about like just like the idea of sovereignty of your own money and being able to manage your own money, your own wallet, your own private keys, conversations like this about how organizations are structured or how things happened. I think the philosophical conversations in the next 5 to 10 years are going to be really, really interesting and really transformative.
Thank you, Joel. What about you, Key? What is your take?
To me, I would say that the entire focus and the way we are turning out is already great, but with the ongoing momentum, we would come to a point where it's the same snowball effect. It's just a point in time when things will, the innovation will not only spark to the level of creativity that we have right now, but functionally, practically, and philosophically, things would be so normal, so day-to-day, so used to it that it'll be part of everything that we are. And I cannot wait to come to a point in time when that happens, when we witness the outburst of the beauty of decentralization coming out there, and platforms like Forward and Umbrella being core players who not only contributed to the technology advancement, but who also were helpful in the shaping up of the ideology of what it is to bring blockchain adoption. I'm very thrilled to be part of the journey, and I cannot look forward to the day when that comes in. We know it's happening, and we know it's happening. It's a question of when, and I'm just looking forward to it.
How about
Yeah,
you,
you know,
Mitch?
just to answer that the question, like what I think the catalyst is, it's I think when you add incentive to anything, people really get stuck in and they do things. And if you think about the massive incentive for us to get this right, just from the impact it can have, the individual projects, the financial incentives for people, the whole change in that financial system, the change in gaming, the change in how we capture and hold and store data. Everything's at that pivotal point. So you have this huge global incentive with people all over the world working on really a unified idea, even if it's from different points of view, different kickoff points. And it's all happening in real time. So we're feeding off each other. As we make progress in one area, we see other companies make progress, and we develop and we fast track and we innovate, and we're all moving towards the same thing. And I think that's been a massive catalyst is, when you incentivize people with anything really, then they get on and they do it. And it's wonderful. I think it's probably the first time in history where, as a global population, because of our communications, the way we communicate, the networks we've got set up, we can actually function almost as an integrated system, even though we're working on different parts of the system. And ultimately, the overall winner will be the system, and the system, the beneficiaries, which are people that utilize these tools, etc., will benefit from it. So I think that's gone a long way to really, accelerate this whole move and this change. And I think that's actually, it's moving much, much faster anyway. And then obviously you chuck, your computational sort of operation ability and the power into that, and you get that acceleration. So I think those two things for me would be the catalysts that have actually, accelerated this whole environment forward and created the space that we've got now. And I think it's just going to happen more and more and more as more people get involved. If you think about the number of people involved in the sector now, that sort of human brain power, add another 1 billion people into that mix, and the incentive that brings, and all of a sudden everything changes again, and we start fast tracking it. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and I think we're going to see a lot of like the fast tracking of innovation over the next sort of year to 18 months as that market grows and more people come into the environment.
Very insightful. Thank you, Mitch. So now I think our time is almost over, but instead of closing remarks, I would very much like to know from each one of you, where do you see your project, your brand, your product being in 5 years' time? Shall we start with the Umbrella Network?
Sure. Where do we see ourselves? I mean, look, when we started the project, our like big vision goal was to, our tagline was, bringing the world's data on chain, and that hasn't changed, and I think that's the ultimate goal for us. We want to bring as much data and getting the cost of data as close to zero as possible, and bring it and making it available on chain. Because at that point, data no longer becomes a bottleneck and is merely almost like a given, right? I mean, look at where we are today with Wi-Fi. 10, 15 years ago, it was, oh, I gotta find a dial-up connection, or I gotta choose a provider. Everybody knew kind of how they got their data. Today, I pay $50 a month. I probably don't know or care who is providing that data because it's ubiquitous and cheap. But because of that, I could do a million things on my laptop and my mobile phone, et cetera, that I couldn't even dream of back when, there was this, bottleneck. Right now, we're still at that bottleneck. So hopefully in 5 years, maybe it'll be a little bit longer, we can be that ubiquitous data provider to Web3. We can be that infrastructure player that can help drive the overall ecosystem by providing all the data for as little as possible, so that real, innovation can happen. Stuff that today we couldn't even imagine that are going to get built, because there's all this, data that's available that can allow people to really, kind of evolve and make people's lives better. So that's the broader vision, and we're going to obviously do our damn best to try to, deliver on that promise.
That's great. That's great.
Amazing.
So from Forward's end, a few years down the line, we are looking at Forward as an ecosystem where there's plenty of developers contributing plenty of templates on one side, and users of all types. They are constantly finding the perfect fit of what they want available there. They can just click and deploy to any chains of their preference. And they are able to, at the same time, have options. The builders have options to all the potential plugins. That is, anyone in the space, DeFi to oracles to any solution that's provided in the blockchain space. They have all those options to customize and deploy. So it's so seamless that any user coming into the Web3 space, wanting to do anything, having an idea, thinks about going forward, and putting something live there in a matter of few minutes. They have it up and running, and they figure out from there. It's the time from ideation to reality becomes so short. They don't think about anything, think about funding. It's just like how people use WordPress websites these days. You have an idea, even before you think about a business plan, you put up a website out there, and then you change the website to think about how you want your business to work. We want it that simple and be that gateway. Anyone entering the space of Web3, they think moving forward.
Okay, so all that remains is to see if we can keep those promises to the community in the future. I would like to thank you very, very much for this amazing conversation, for your amazing insights, to the Umbrella Network and to the Forward Protocol team. And of course, a big thanks to the community who is with us and Cryptopolitan who is hosting us. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah, good chatting.
Same. Take care.
Take care.